Welcome back to Granja Caimito in the Pedroche Valley of Andalusia, Spain. This time there will be another look across the fence, and we are going to look at the different paddocks and how the newly planted grass is coming along. We will also have a look at the swales and how they are filling up. This breach in the wall got also fixed, because last year and before, every time when we have more forage than here on the neighbor's land, the one where the bad neighbor is still roaming, we had the problem that those cows, and that includes this one here, the one with the chain, which is also something that people should not be doing. I even believe it is not allowed, but people still do it. This one and two others, they always came over and were trying to eat on our side, because there is almost nothing, and therefore this piece here got fixed. It's not perfect, but at least it sends a signal. And of course they have learned that on our side there are a few things that provide an electric shock, and that includes these white bands. So this is not perfect, but it does the job for the moment. It is, after all, a part of a seasonal creek, so when water comes down from that side, which may be just a trickle by now given all the modifications, but if it comes down, then it goes through here and then continues, and it will then meet another seasonal creek there further to the left, and depending on how that goes, we can then probably close this for good or find another solution if there's still some running water. But at least that problem is now under control. The sheep are in here for a while, so they can eat and do some maintenance and do not interfere with the construction that is going on. I am referring to building fences in our zone B, so that they don't rub themselves on freshly set fence posts with concrete that still has to cure. Some of you might not know what this round dish is there in the background. This is our internet connection. We are now able to upload a 4K video in an hour, what used to take more than 24 hours. It is another weekend, and I just provided those boys and girls here their pellets, the supplemental feed. This is how it looks like. I guess you have not seen it before. I talked about it, but you have not really seen it. So here it is. And this is how the temporary paddock, which we now designate CT9C, so we have A, B and C, looks like. There is a lot more biomass in here because of the straw and of course the cow patties, like this one here. And there is also a lot of hoof action, as can be seen. That is where they hang out at night, so there is a higher concentration, and they have also loosened up the soil quite a bit. And speaking about loosen up, this area here has a lot of stones and is kind of in bad shape. That is why I provide the pellets there, because there is more hoof action when they go after the pellets. So that is why I do it this way. And I will now walk around here a little bit to find out how are we going to play this next. And I have an idea that we might want to keep one of the CT9 sections closed for a while, so that now over spring the young trees in there can produce leaves and continue to grow, because that used to be the idea, to protect them by keeping the paddock closed for a while. So I will see how I can create an intermediate plan. So here you can see one of the challenges and why I don't really like these L-shaped metal fence posts. This was set when the ground was harder, before the rain that we are now getting, and now see what happens. You see, this is pretty loose, and this is maybe some 30 centimeters into the ground. And that is as deep as the guys were able to punch it through, or punch it in, and that is not a very good thing. So now with the rain, the top part is now loose and soft, but below it there is hard pan, so to say. So this is like concrete, and it takes a while for this to loosen up, and by then we might already be in summer. So that is part of the issue. But this will all solve itself over time, I believe. So this is just an obstacle. This is not the end of the road. In here we have played the game with the straw, but we have not seeded into the straw, because at the time we did not have the seed. And you can see how it has been coming up so far, thanks to the rain and some sunshine. And I believe if you will look very closely, you can see that the growth is much better where there is straw, because it holds the moisture for longer. So even without seeding, the technique of distributing straw in little piles together with the cows does help to improve. As you can see, this is one of the temporary paddocks. Temporary because they are way too large. We want to have them smaller. So this one is designated CT8, and it has a little bit of rest, quite some time. And we have also the mustard coming up in here. It's the only one where that happens in that way. Also, I believe there is another one that I'm going to show you where we also suddenly have some mustards. Of course, the mustard makes it look very interesting. For example, if I zoom in there in the distance, you will then think, oh, there is a lot of forage, but it's not really the case. The mustard is just tall and gives this impression. The reality looks more like that. But at least something is coming up, and that is a very positive sign. So, as usual, the game plan here is to divide this into at least 3 actual paddocks. We are going to use the metal fence posts for all of these things at the moment, but maybe here and there, time permitting, we make a proper door with wooden fence post so that this is prepared for the installation of wire mesh, so that all these paddocks step by step become pig safe. Of course, we will do this first close to the animal lanes so that we can move the pigs up and down. But this is how this area looks like coming into spring, and in a little while we will bring the cows in here, but this time we will have these subdivisions made. We need to figure out how to connect these subdivisions to the animal lane, because right now this here is the animal lane, and somehow we need to have a way to get them in and out without using the adjacent paddocks. So there's a little bit of design required, and I will now walk a little bit around to make up my mind how this might look like. This here is the paddock CT4, a temporary one, where we started to seed into straw the first time. And since the cows have left, this is now excluded from grazing, because we want the new grasses to establish themselves. So let's walk around a little bit and see how everything has developed so far. This particular patch looks really nice. Of course, it's all patchy, it's not seeded equally as you would achieve that by using a machine with all the other preparatory steps. We just sow seed in the air and cover this with straw, or we made a pile of straw for the cows to eat from and then sprinkled some seeds on top of it. But it doesn't really matter, because the point is to let this grow, go to seed, and then seed itself. There's also the rye in the trenches as an additional element. We had a bag of rye that was sitting in the shed for more than a year, and so I said, okay, let's try this. There is nothing to lose, and apparently that is working. We also have some mustard here, and I would guess, as this has not been here before, that the cows brought the mustard in from elsewhere. Now that we are getting rain, all the other grasses and other plants are also coming up that used to be here before. Of course, it's not really forage, but at least it turns this whole area that was barren now into something greenish. I can also find patches like this. This looks much better than before, because now there is nutrients and the soil has been loosened up a little bit. Here in this particular patch, I said in an earlier video that I fear that we might losing it for lack of rain. Well, it is still there, and it is also looking very good. Of course, it is just a patch, and around it looks like that. But like I said before, the point here is we have established something new that will go to seed at some point, and then it's a question of management, and we can always overseed again. And that way, without having a tractor, without having to till, we are improving this area. What you see down there is our green silo. We are not using it, but at least that is where the compound is. And you can see the sea of oak trees, which this area is very famous for. That is how the sky looks like. It's cloudy, we get some sunshine in between. There is no rain in the forecast for later today or for tomorrow, but for Monday and the rest of the week it showed rain. We will see how much that's going to be. This is another area where we have seeded into straw, and you can see here in the foreground it looks pretty bad, but we have those green islands now. We now have the challenge that we need to plan our paddock use in such a way that we don't need to graze in the areas where we have freshly established plants. So we need to be careful where to seed and where not to seed. Because if we were seeding everywhere, it would be nice, but then we had no place to go with the cows, and that's not the idea. So we need to define a few areas that we are going to use without seeding, and taking well into account that these areas might not be very well this time. They might be very well next time, but that's a little bit of challenge. So we need to figure out the sequence in which to do all this. I am told that on Monday the guy with the mules will show up here. He said he will come with 2 mules, and as a friend of his who also has 2 mules, and he might also show up if needed. So first he comes with his 2, and then we will start preparing this for seeding. This will be tilled, a one-time till, and then he said it has to be left alone for a little while, and then we can seed, and he will also do this to rake the seed in and all that. And the plan is to use a mix. I could now talk about that mix, but I forgot all the names of the plants, so this is something I will mention later when we actually have the seed. So I did some research and some conversations with seed suppliers, and we will see what will actually show up. But the idea is to establish here some warm season plants as forage, and also to improve the soil, of course, because right now it is still on the very sandy side and there's not much there, as you can see here. So this now might become a reality, and my intention is now to walk over to the swale, the one with the palovnia trees, and have a closer look. This is how the swale looks like, the one at CT2 with the palovnia trees. There is quite a bit of water in there, but full is another thing. It is a combination of the rainfall and also the pumping, because I left the hose open on purpose, basically to fill the area to the left with every drop that is available. It is definitely more than before, but there's still a lot of room to store more water. But then it's also supposed to soak in, so it doesn't really matter, as long as it's there and it's not completely dry. One word here about the design, the idea behind all this. So to the left we have the swale, and then we have a few oak trees, and you see the metal fence post there and where the fence line goes. That is not the final fence line. The final fence line will be more to the right, and the idea is at some point to bring a few picks to smoothen the edge that is right in front of me, so that it looks a little bit nicer. And that is something that will happen once we established the final fence line, and that is going to be in connection with building this animal lane. So you see here to the right those white flexible fence posts. This is a temporary thing. Eventually they will be wooden, and there will be the wire mesh that is pick safe. And when we do that, then we will have the left side, and the left side might then be the boundary for this swale area, or we might set the fence post somewhere in between and have a smaller paddock in between, so a very small strip, a lane or something like that, but I'm not really sure. It might also be that we will establish in that strip some very densely planted trees, and that is something to be seen, but definitely it will not be this year, because densely planted trees require to have access to a lot of saplings, and we don't have that yet. Here we have one of the palovnia trees. This one sits in the center of the berm, and it's supposed to stay for a long time to provide shade and biomass when the leaf falls. And the new leaves and branches can clearly be seen. This one here is smaller, but is a little bit ahead than the taller one. And this here is an even better example. This is a really fast growing tree. The nice thing is that even without seeding here, because we had not enough seed, there is stuff establishing itself. So I'm very grateful for these volunteer plants, as someone called this a little while ago. This time the water level has almost reached the step. So here to the left there is some puddles in the swale, and to the right where we have the integrated pond. It looks well filled, but keep in mind the last time, leaving winter, this was filled to the brim and also overflowing. So there's still way to go. The beans on the berm are growing well. And also in the distance you can see that the green from whatever seed was already there is also coming up. But it is also an area to bring the mules in and to establish something more, how do I say it, appropriate, maybe not elaborate, no. So something more useful for our context. One of the things that I'm trying to find is sun hemp, S-U-N-N and then hemp, but it's not hemp. So it has nothing to do with things that people who like to smoke might find interesting. It's a totally different plant despite a similar name. And sun hemp is also a heat-loving plant, and it is supposed to have a lot of good characteristics for repairing soil. One of you recommended that, so thank you for that. And and I actually found a local supplier. So I hope that I'm able to get this seed when it's time to bring it out.
That was it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting. We are short of the transition between winter and spring, and so there will be a lot more about the rain, how we store the water, and how the different tree species and so on are coming into spring. Come back in a few days.